What's next for the Denver Nuggets? This was obviously a really tough year for the Denver Nuggets and for their fans. At one point, they looked like the best team in the Western Conference. They got off to a bit of a slow start at the beginning of the year. They make the Aaron Gordon trade, and for about 8 or 9 games, everything looks fantastic for them. They've found their Jeremy Grant replacement. They found someone that's going to defend for them on the wing and defend some of the best front court players in the entire league. They got Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic working. Jokic is on his way to an MVP season. And then the Jamal Murray injury happens. And I honestly thought that before the Murray injury, the Nuggets were as legit of a title team as any team in the entire league. And they found a way to still fight through a first-round series against the Blazers, win that one in 6, despite no Jamal Murray, despite no Will Barton, despite Monty Morris being on a minutes restriction at times in that series, and a backcourt consisting of Campazzo and Austin Rivers and Monty Morris going up against a backcourt consisting of Damian Lillard and TJ McCollum. It's kind of a miracle they were able to beat the Trailblazers in the first round, but then they just ran into an extremely good Suns team that's playing really, really well right now, and now their season's over. So what's next for them this offseason? Let's go ahead and talk about it. So as I said, unfortunately, this was a lost season for Denver, but they had a lot of things figured out. They looked like a title contending team, looked like arguably the best roster in the Western Conference when fully healthy. The Aaron Gordon trade was fantastic for them. He was a perfect fit. And now they just got to figure out a way to make sure this roster is continuously in contention for the next couple of seasons. As we start with their payroll sheet for this offseason, there's not a ton of decisions for this offseason, but there's some interesting things they need to think about moving forward. So in terms of their free agents, this summer they've got Paul Millsap, Austin Rivers, and then Will Barton has a player option of a little bit over $14 million for this offseason. My first guess would be that he is going to pick that option up and return to the team. Either way, even if he does decline it, this is a team that does not have salary cap space. Even if Will Barton declines this option, they'll be right at the salary cap anyway. So for them, ideally, Barton opts back into his player option. He's an important part of the rotation, despite the fact that it seems like he's hurt constantly. And then all the things that you had at your disposal prior to whether you knew or did not know that Will Barton was going to opt into his option are still there. You still have your salary cap exceptions that you can sign some free agents to in the offseason, and you have some trade assets as well if you want to make moves of any variety, really. They've done something that's really smart that I think other teams might start to copy, is they've recognized that they're a contending team right now, and so when they've made trades to go out and get players, they've traded picks a little bit further into the future. So for example, they don't have access to their 2023 pick or their 2025 pick, I believe, as a result of the Aaron Gordon trade, but they still have access to 21 and 22. So in this next 2-year window where they're expected to be really good, they're still going to have the ability to draft players to add to their roster, potentially use as trade assets. Because even though they can't trade, for example, that 2022 pick right now, once they make that selection, they can trade that player. The step-in rule doesn't exist on players once you've already drafted them. In terms of trade stuff, they do have the option to trade that 21 pick if they chose to, and of course, always the option as well of moving any of the number of interesting young players they have on this roster, Michael Porter Jr. obviously being the biggest one, and then Bol Bol and a handful of other guys as well. And if there's a team in the league that I'm banking on to pick and draft really well, it's Denver. I mean, they have Nikola Jokic, who just won the MVP, was the 41st pick in the draft. Jamal Murray was a high lottery pick, but still there was no guarantee Jamal Murray was going to be a really good player. Of course, Michael Porter Jr., there's guys all over the league, Malik Beasley, that were drafted by Denver, and there's so many of them that they kind of had to get rid of some of them because they didn't want to have to pay them all. This is a team that has shown an inclination towards trading away future picks. Like I said, the Gordon trade where they traded multiple picks. The Jeremy Grant trade as well, where they sent a first-round pick to Oklahoma City for Jeremy Grant, and he was obviously hugely helpful to their team as well. This is not going to be a roster and an organization that's just going to kind of sit around and hope that good things happen to them. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to go out and make some moves. Ideally, they get another guy on the perimeter that can guard and can shoot. The problem is every team in the league is looking for guys like that, but when you look at their roster, there's a lot of offensive-oriented players, Jokic, Murray, Barton, and not a ton of perimeter defenders and then off-ball shooters. Gordon is a good perimeter defender and a rebounder and a rim protector at times and a really good athlete, but not a great outside shooter. Hopefully he can correct that in the offseason. There's just not a lot of complete all-around complementary options in this roster, and so it'd be nice for them to either draft one of those guys or trade for them. I would expect that to be their biggest target to really kind of round out this roster. Now, the other thing to keep in mind for them this offseason is you can tell that next summer is a huge summer for this roster. Assuming Barton opts in, he will be a free agent. Aaron Gordon will be a free agent. MPJ as well as Bol Bol will also be restricted free agents in that summer. So they could possibly look at extending any number of those players. The one that obviously I'm paying attention to the most here is going to be Michael Porter Jr. We'll talk about him in a second. Aaron Gordon, I would not be shocked to see an extension for Aaron Gordon this offseason. Clearly, it's a good fit for him. Clearly, the team likes having him there, and rather than having him hit unrestricted free agency next offseason, they'll probably try and work out an extension to keep him on the roster. But let's talk about Michael Porter Jr. because everything about this roster kind of revolves around him. Because we don't know when Jamal Murray is going to come back and be fully healthy. We don't know, any of the other pieces really on this roster in the long term in terms of what they could potentially be. We know what Michael Porter Jr. could be. He could be a fantastic 3-level scorer, and he's shown flashes of that. And whether it was once Murray went out or just later in the year in general, Porter Jr. was really, really good. And then we get to the postseason and he had some big games. He was very up and down, which has kind of been a theme of his career. The thing that makes me nervous, though, is it's clear that whatever back injury issue stuff caused him to slide down into the late lottery, they still exist. Those things have not gone away. And every indication that we got at the time of the draft was everybody knew this guy was incredibly talented, but the medical stuff scared off teams so badly that is why he slipped to where he did. And if he isn't going to be fully healthy, that's a huge blow to this team, especially if they sign him to a significant extension. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. If Denver's not aggressive about trying to re-sign Michael Porter Jr. to an extension this offseason in advance of next summer, that would make me nervous if I was a Nuggets fan because they know everything about his medicals, and that tells me that maybe they're not supremely confident that he's going to be able to keep it together health-wise. And so that's another reason why if I'm Denver, I really would like to go out and get another wing just as insurance. You don't really know if Michael Porter Jr. is going to be able to be fully healthy moving forward. Like I said, that back injury stuff seemed to kind of flare up for him a little bit in the postseason, and I know that is a huge, huge concern about him. But ultimately, here's the bottom line. Nikola Jokic is going to be on this roster moving forward. He's a free agent in the summer of 2023. They're going to sign him to an extension. Jamal Murray is signed through the summer of 2025. And they've got some extension candidates like Gordon and Barton potentially, and MPJ and Bol Bol, but they've got options. If they look at this roster and they say, we're one piece away, okay, here's our 2021 pick. Let's go out and get Robert Covington or whatever the case may be, right? Like let's say Portland starts tearing it down and they need a wing. They go out and get Robert Covington, add him to this roster. He's a guy that gets traded all the time. Or they can stand pat and they can say, hey, we just want to make sure that Jamal Murray gets fully healthy. We want to make sure that MPJ is fully healthy. We're not really in a hurry. Jokic is 26, Murray is 24, Gordon is 25, MPJ is 22. Like, we're not necessarily in a hurry to make some kind of win now move. Or the option always exists that if they think Michael Porter Jr. has a ton of value around the league in comparison to where they're at with him, considering the health stuff, they can go out and they can try and, grab another star that is a more reliable perimeter scorer, especially in the immediate absence of Jamal Murray. Michael Porter Jr. in a 21 pick, I'm sure would fetch something significant in the trade market if that is an option that they wanted to explore. But ultimately, it's going to depend on the health of Michael Porter Jr. It's going to depend on the health of Jamal Murray and whenever he returns. But assuming those guys are good to go and they have the roster they had at the beginning of this year, and then you add Gordon to that, this is a really, really good and a really dangerous Denver Nuggets team. Jokic is incredible. Porter Jr. made strides this year as a scorer, even though the health stuff does scare me. And we know what Jamal Murray brings to the table. If he can come back fully healthy, this is going to be a contending team for years and years and years. I don't know if Denver's going to win a title with this group, but they're going to be heard from every single year, assuming that they're fully healthy. There's no real obstacle to them from a roster building standpoint, from a payroll standpoint. There's no big extension that I'm necessarily concerned about someone leaving and them not having as good of a team. They have the ability to re-sign all these guys. It's just going to depend on if they're healthy and the internal improvement of Michael Porter Jr. That is the difference maker for this group. Is if he becomes an all-star caliber player, the Nuggets, arguably, maybe outside of Dallas, depending on what they can do to add pieces around Luka, have the highest upside in terms of their ability to win titles on a consistent basis or to compete for titles on a consistent basis over the next couple of years out of any team in the Western Conference. I'm incredibly interested to see what they do with this roster this offseason, potential, Paul Millsap re-signings, or, does Will Barton opt in or out? Do they sign Porter Jr. to an extension? Do they sign Aaron Gordon to an extension? All those things are things I am incredibly interested about. I can't wait to see what Denver does this offseason, because it was just so unfortunate that it was such a lost season for them. So if they can come back next year better than ever, I'm all for that. But that is going to be the end of today's video in terms of what is next for the Denver Nuggets. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like rating on the video. Consider subscribing if you are new as well. And you can check out more videos from me in the boxes on screen if you want to check those out. With all those things said, once again, my name is Tucker. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.